That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about the best and worst films of the 2024 Cannes Film Festival, aka the 77th edition.
So, how many films did you watch?
Altogether, 60 films from the program.
6-0.
6-0.
And you're going to give us your 10 favorites.
And I wrote reviews for 37 of them.
Okay. You're going to give us your 10 favorites and your 5 least favorite.
Yeah, as per usual. And I don't know if you want to talk about the awards.
At the end, I'll go over the awards. What would you like to start with?
Should we get the worst out of the way?
Whatever you're feeling.
Okay, so my 5 least favorites. So at number 5, I had Limonov, directed by Kirill Serebrennikov. I was highly disappointed in this. Ben Whishaw plays the notable author / war criminal that is based slightly on a publication by Emmanuel Carrere, which I read right before, and I highly recommend reading that. I really don't understand what Serebrennikov was doing with casting Ben Whishaw, who does have a nice Russian accent, but then while in Russia speaking English, which to me, this is something Limonov would have actually quite hated, and then chooses to kind of leave out like particular events such as Limonov's behavior in Sarajevo in the early 90s, which caused him the West really to turn his back on him. But otherwise, a very interesting subject matter, but I don't think this worked at all. In fact, if I had just seen it not knowing anything, I would have assumed some American had directed it. Number 4, Dog on Trial, which is part of the Uncertain Regard section. I think a directorial debut by the actor Letitia Dosh, based apparently on the true story of this lawyer who takes on the case of this man who has this dog that bit 3 people, and she tries to get the dog classified as a subject rather than an object, therefore acting separately from the owner to try to save it, and the dog of course ends up being euthanized. But this was corny as hell. I could not, it felt very mainstream French cinema of the moment. Number 3, Megalopolis, which I had several friends that I will have to say must be absolute contrarians that quite liked this film. The expensive, self-financed new feature from Francis Ford Coppola, which is decades in the making, with a pretty amazing cast led by Adam Driver, set in the future about a man that has developed a new kind of material called, I'm forgetting, that he's going to reconstruct the city with, called Megalopolis. Kind of like in Anne Ryan's Atlas Shrugged. This felt very much like Coppola mixing Rand and Shakespearean narrative tendencies, but the writing and some of the acting, some of the cast is okay, but Nathalie Emmanuel is like dead behind the eyes and has no idea how to deliver this ultra pretentious dialogue that's going on. I also think Coppola doesn't really know what to do with beautiful young women as far as directing goes. The bright spot in it is Aubrey Plaza, but she's kind of doing her own thing. It felt very much like Gina Gershon in Showgirls. Like, I know what to do with this material because nobody else seems to do so. And there is one very nice moment where John Voight shoots Aubrey Plaza in the chest and calls her a Wall Street slut, which I was amused by. But yeah, I thought, and you know, for having spent all this money on it, it's a lot of really bad green screen. If anybody else in the world had directed this, it would not have been taking up a slot in the Cannes main competition. So I guess, I think there might be some argument to celebrate it in some way, but based on this presentation at this film festival, no, I don't think it's defensible at all. Number 2, L'amour ouf, aka Beating Hearts by Gilles Lellouche, was also in the main competition, starring Adele Exarchopoulos and Francois Civil. I really didn't like this film. It's 2.5 hours long. It's trying to be kind of a love story / musical / Scorsese style gangland epic. Exarchopoulos, who's having a relationship with 2 very different men, is very detached from both of them. It spends an hour in the childhood version of these characters, which it does not need to do. Yes, a nice soundtrack. Same thing with Limonov. Nice soundtrack, the terrible film. And my least favorite film was the new Paolo Sorrentino film Parthenope, which also just feels like this another film directed by an older man that is in love with beautiful young women but doesn't know how to make them interesting to anybody but themselves or people who just want to stare at them endlessly. And this was also a Saint Laurent production, and it just was superficial.
Does it look nice?
It does look nice, but I don't know. Do I want to just watch a photo shoot of a young woman who's ogled all the time? I don't know. And the script that is so cheesy and so corny, and they keep telling us how smart she is and has all these quips to say, and it's like, but she's never really saying anything smart. I don't know. I hated it. It's terrible, I thought.
Well, let's get to films you liked.
Yes. At number 10, Rumours, which I believe
Not
is...
Lindsay Lohan's hit from 2005?
No, but I do believe that the title is taken from the Fleetwood Mac album.
Oh, sure.
Directed by Guy Maddin and Evan and Galen Johnson. It's a Canadian production, of course, from Guy Maddin. I think the first time he's been at Cannes, but this is out of competition, was a special screening. But that it makes the list. It was my 6th film I saw that day, and I was quite highly entertained. I think it could be a little stronger and a little tighter, but it's about 7 world leaders meeting at a G7 summit in Germany, led by Kate Blanchett, who's playing Hilda. And they're supposed to meet to address some mysterious issue that's happened, and it seems the world around them has gone quiet and they're isolated and things are falling apart and strange shit's happening in the woods. But it's quite entertaining. I think the Canadian Prime Minister, played by Roy Dupuis, and Charles Dance, who's British, playing the US President. I don't know. It was highly amusing. Again, it could have been a little tighter, but I was entertained. And for those who are familiar with the work of Guy Maddin, I think this is a complete surprise, based on kind of his stylistic choices of everything he's done before.
Number 9.
Flow, directed by a Latvian whose name I'm probably going to butcher, Gints Zilbalodis, which is in the Uncertain Regard section, which I only saw because of a timing schedule on one of my last days. But it's about an unnamed cat who has this tranquil existence out in the woods, when all of a sudden it seems the whole world is drowning, a la during Noah's Ark, and all of these animals of different species and types get together on the boat and kind of have to support each other, which sounds really odd, but it was actually kind of a very touching animated film. And of course, they're making some noises, but there's no dialogue. But yeah, and then all of a sudden, crack opens up in the earth and all the water goes away, and then the animals are kind of wanting to stay together, a la Homeward Bound. But yeah, I thought it was kind of touching.
Number 8.
On Becoming a Guinea Fowl, directed by Rungano Nyoni, who is probably best known for her sophomore film, I believe, I Am Not a Witch, which got a lot of attention. This was also part of Uncertain Regard. It's an A24 film, and it's about a young woman named Sula, I believe her character played by Susan Chardy, who's driving along one night wearing a very bizarre outfit, and she sees her uncle on the road dead. And so begins like the funeral that's happening for her uncle, and we come to find it seems like he raped and or sexually assaulted almost every female member of this family, and yet they have to go through with this performative traditional mourning for this man. And by the time you get to the end of it and you find out what the guinea fowl represents, I think it leads to a quite powerful finale, and I really did like the lead character.
What's next?
Number 7, Caught by the Tides, the latest film directed by Zhangke, which I was going and expecting to be kind of dry because he's compiled 20 years worth of footage and also kind of transposed a narrative on top of that. But it basically takes place from 2001 to 2022 and stars his usual muse and wife, Zhao Tao, who I did quite like in this. And in short, it's about a man and a woman who have this relationship. She's kind of a model / performer, and he decides to go to a bigger area, and he abandons her, saying he'll find her later. And she's mute, by the way. She doesn't speak any dialogue. And they just kind of don't reconnect for 20 years, even though she goes looking for him. And there's another film at the festival, Marcelo Gomez's Grand Tour, that has a very similar narrative style in that vein. But I did like this a lot better. And it's also about changing landscapes and technology in China. The Three Gorges Dam is also in the background, which was... Zhangke already made a very famous film, I believe that won Venice, called Still Life, about that. And the other actor from that film is the man in question being sought after and caught by the tides. But I thought it was lovely. Number six. The Girl with a Needle, directed by Magnus van Horn, which is part of the main competition. He's Swedish. I saw his last film, Sweat, which is part of the 2020. It got the Cannes label, which of course there was no film festival that year. This is a period piece. I didn't know what to expect, but it's very bleak, which is right up my alley. But it's about these two women, Vic Carmensana and Trina Deerholm, who I'm quite a big fan of. Trina, you just saw her recently in Mary and George as Queen Anne. It's set in 1919 Copenhagen, and it's about this woman who has a candy shop, but she kind of also provides services for women that have babies they don't want to take care of, saying that she'll provide them with an anonymous foster family, only come to find she's taking these babies and these people's money for her to do the service and then just killing them. But she sees something special or something that she likes in this other woman who ends up being her helpmate, and then finds out the terrible thing she's doing.
Number 5.
All We Imagine as Light, directed by Payal Kapadia. Her second film, her first one was a documentary, kind of an experimental documentary. So this is her first narrative feature. It reminded me a lot of like Satyajit Ray's films that deal with women, such as The Big City. So if you're a fan of any of his works, I think this is right up your alley. But it's set in Mumbai, and it's about two women who are nurses and living together, and from different generations, and they go on a road trip and kind of have some epiphanies about themselves and the way that their life could be. And it's also supposed to be a reflection on kind of how things are progressing very slowly for women and their options. But I thought it was a very lovely film, and it won it won the second place prize, basically.
Number 4.
Number 4, Emilia Perez, the latest film directed by Jacques Audiard, whose last film I could not stand, Paris 13th District. So I went into this being highly skeptical because I knew what it was about, which is a drug cartel leader in Mexico City who has always wanted to become a woman and so has to fake his own death to do so. And it's also a musical. Zoe Saldana plays this lawyer who is approached by this cartel leader who ends up becoming Carla Sofia Gascon, who has this beautiful kind of Fanny Ardant vibe to her on screen. So I quite enjoyed. And then Selena Gomez plays the wife of the cartel leader who's being looked after but thinks that her husband is dead. And this Emilia Perez is some long lost cousin of her husband's that she's now stuck kind of being looked after until she finds a new man played by Edgar Ramirez that wants to marry her and kind of upsets everything. But I was quite surprised I liked the musical numbers. I think there's some actually pretty good choreography. I was very impressed by Zoe Saldana in ways that I never would have thought. The jury decided to give Best Actress to the ensemble, so the four main women. And I think was a way to, because of the gendered acting categories, because the one that deserved this distinction was Carla Sofia Gascon, but I think this was their way around that, strangely. And it also won another award, the jury prize, which is actually the third place prize. At number 3, The Seed of the Sacred Fig, the latest film directed by Mohammad Rasoulof, which there was a lot of controversy before the film festival because, of course, in early May, the Iranian government sentenced him to 8 years in prison and flogging and the confiscation of his property because of this film. And of course, Rasoulof has had, like a lot of Iranian's most notable directors, a lot of run-ins with the law, and so had to flee the country secretly, and I believe had to go through Germany. The buzz about the film ahead of time was that it was very flying in the face of what the government censors would allow to be shown. And so it's nearly 3 hours. It's very blunt. It's very obvious with what it's doing, but I don't think we've seen it. It's also very, dare I say, thrilling. I was on edge the whole time watching it, and it's kind of showing footage from the actual women's movement. It was called Women Freedom Liberty Movement. There was a woman that was basically murdered, and the press tried to say it was because she had a stroke, but it was over drama because she wasn't wearing her hijab in public, and kind of the civil unrest that happened in 22 around that. And but that is in the background in this story about a man who has just been promoted as an investigator. In his dream is the next step would to be a judge for the revolutionary court. So in other words, people that are passing sentence on, like passing death sentences on people that, you know, come into their orbit, keeping the current way of life in place, which is, you know, problematic. And because of this, his wife finally decides to tell his 2 daughters, one who's 20 and one who's still a teenager, what their father really does, because now they have to really watch what they're doing, and eventually they will be moved to kind of like basically a safe house in a neighborhood where there are other people like this, because their information could be published online and then they could be, you know, harassed or assaulted, basically. And so he gets this promotion just as all of this stuff is happening in Tehran. And then his gun that he's given for his new position suddenly disappears. And if he reports that, he will serve a prison sentence. But it's got to be one of the 3 women in his house. So then it becomes this tense unwinding where paranoia and a descent into madness happened, and the end of it really kind of feels like The Shining to me with Jack Nicholson. But I had a lot of conversations with people about this. Again, it is very blunt and on the nose, but then Iranian cinema is never allowed to be that. So I think there's something very kind of refreshing about it. I think the 3 women are fantastic. Sohila Golestani is the mother, and Masa Rostami and Sitara Maleki as the daughters. I think I understand the reaction that it's had there, but it also suggests that maybe things are crumbling.
Number 2.
The Substance, directed by Coralie Fargeat, a sophomore film. Arguably, I mean, maybe it's trash cinema, but it is a lot of fun. It is about an actress who is a child star, Oscar winner, and now doing some kind of fitness show on television, played by Demi Moore. And she has just turned 50. The showrunner, Dennis Quaid, who's a misogynist pig, fires her on her birthday. She gets in a car accident, goes to the hospital, and there she is seen by an orderly that slipped something in her pocket, and it's basically a USB drive that tells her about this program called The Substance that allows you to have a better version of yourself for 7 days of the week, and that this better version, better, younger, faster, blah 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 version, you have to keep switching back every 7 days as part of the program. So she thinks it's a joke, but she goes to this mysterious place in LA, it looks like somewhere downtown, gets this stuff she has to inject, and out of her body, out of her back, out of her spine, pops Margaret Qualley. But then, of course, Margaret Qualley doesn't want to keep popping back in Demi's body every 7 days. And when there are these violations happening, the host body, they call it the Matrix, Demi Moore starts basically becoming this old crone. But it is fascinating. It's giving me, Death Becomes Her mixed with all these great body horror films, like outside of the Cronenberg universe even, like Frank. It was giving me kind of like that very fun, cheesy Frank Henenlotter vibe, or Brian Usna's Society, and it's of course a lot of obvious commentary about women and even substance. Like there's don't we have so much more substance than just our superficial beauty? But these women. And Demi Moore's character's self-loathing don't allow them to think so. And I don't know, it's 2 hours and 20 minutes. It does not feel that way to me. And the score, the soundtrack is fantastic. I really liked it.
And what's your favorite film?
And it won Best Screenplay. My favorite film was actually the film that won the Palme d'Or, which was Anora, directed by Sean Baker. You, of course, are familiar with Mr. Baker for Tangerine, but I've seen all of his films, and I don't know, there's not a bad one among them, but I really, really liked Anora. It's basically about it's set in New York. It's about a woman named Anora, or Annie as she likes to go by, as an exotic dancer. And one night in this strip joint she works in called Headquarters, this very young man, 20-something, comes in and he wants a dancer that speaks Russian. And because her grandmother was Russian, she speaks it and understands it, but doesn't really like to. But he gives her all this money. It basically kind of starts out like a Pretty Woman kind of story, where he really likes her, asks her to stay with him for the week, and then his father is this powerful figure in Russia, and we come to find that he's expected to go back there. This is his last kind of time to sow his wild oats. He hires her for the week. She goes to Las Vegas with him, and then they decide to get married as a way for him to stay in the country. But she kind of starts to become confused about what that relationship might really mean. When his family finds out about it, and his handlers, played by Karen Karagulian, who was the taxi driver in Tangerine and several other Baker films, everything goes haywire, and they're trying to wrangle these two young things together to get the marriage annulled. And meanwhile, his bigwig father and mother from Russia fly over to take care of business. Mikey Madison plays Anora, which is a performance that I would call ferocious. And if this hadn't won the Palme, I bet she would have won Best Actress. But yeah, I don't know. I can't wait for you to see it, because I think that you're going to like it. And it's, yeah.
Well, I was going to review the winners from the competition, but you already said 5 of the 7, so I don't know. I can just quickly go through them. Best Screenplay, The Substance, by Coralie Fargeat. Best Actor went to Jesse Plemons for Kinds of Kindness.
Yeah, which I didn't love Kinds of Kindness. I felt very cold towards it. There were people that absolutely loved it, raving about it. Maybe on a rewatch, but it felt like a Black Mirror miniseries directed by Lanthimos, and he threw 3 episodes together. It just felt too long, too cold. There's some fun things in it. It looks great, but and Jesse Plemons is fine. I think they didn't want to touch Sebastian Stan playing Donald Trump in The Apprentice, even though I think that would have been I actually think he probably should have won the Best Actor for that, especially since Trump sent a cease and desist letter. But yeah.
Best Actress went to those 4 ladies from Emilia, Perez. Best Director went to Miguel Gomez for Grand Tour.
Oh yeah, Miguel. Did I say Marcello earlier? Yes, Miguel Gomez.
The Jury Prize, which is 3rd place, went to Emilia Perez. Grand Prix, which is 2nd prize, went to All We Imagine Is Light. And then 1st place was Anora by Sean Baker.
Yes, and then they created a special award for Seed of the Sacred Fig, which I thought was odd.
What does that mean?
That there's not an award for that category, so it's like they made a special distinction, which the jury sometimes can do.
But what is it, why is this movie different?
They decided to just do that.
But
probably because of the cultural importance of the film.
So it's not like they don't think it's best film or best
They didn't think it was best 1st, 2nd, or 3rd place, but they created this weird. It's kind of like during the 70th year.
That's like a participation badge.
Yeah, it's odd, but I think in juries Greta Gerwig was the jury president. I think everybody was expecting, because of the social, cultural importance of this film, that this would win a major award. But then maybe it was too on the nose for it to do so. Kind of like when George Miller gave it to Daniel Blake, and many times over, juries have done that. But it's kind of like on the 70th edition of the festival, Nicole Kidman had 4 movies in the program, 2 of them in competition, and rather than give her Best Actress, they gave her a special 70th anniversary award. So it's like a way of showing something a little love and a distinction, but it's not really part of the awards, really.
Do you have anything else you want to say?
No.
All right. Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.